Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're diving into the world of cryptocurrency.
Oh, exciting.
It is, and focusing specifically on Bitcoin and its potential future.
All right.
We've got a really fascinating mix of materials for this one. Market analysis, industry news, expert opinions.
Sounds like a lot to cover.
It is a lot to unpack.
Yeah, definitely. It's like the snapshot of where things are at right now with Bitcoin. We've
Yeah.
got Bitcoin's price action, major corporate moves, changes in the regulatory landscape, all kinds of things.
Yeah, we've got Bitcoin almost breaking $100,000 recently, then pulling back.
Oh, wow.
A major company just made a huge Bitcoin purchase.
Really?
Yeah, and then we've got some changes at the SEC that could really shake things up for
Interesting.
the whole crypto world. Where should we even start?
Well, I guess we could start with Bitcoin's recent price pick,
Okay.
getting $968.
Wow.
So close.
So close to that $100,000 milestone,
Yeah.
even though I didn't quite reach it. And then it pulled back
Right.
to $96,865.67.
Yeah, it shows just how volatile this market can be.
Definitely a roller coaster.
Yeah.
But you know what? I've been following crypto for a while now, and these swings don't really surprise me as much anymore.
Yeah, they're pretty typical, right?
Yeah.
For those of us who've been watching this space for a while, these fluctuations are almost expected.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that this is still a relatively young market. I mean, think of it like the early days of the internet. There
Yeah.
were periods of rapid growth followed by corrections, so...
Yeah, so for someone new to crypto, seeing those huge price swings might be really nerve-wracking.
Right.
But for those who understand the long-term potential, it's just part of the game.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of big players and long-term potential, we have to talk about MicroStrategy's recent purchase of 55,500 Bitcoins.
Wow. That's over $5 billion worth.
Huge.
They're clearly not messing around.
No, they're not.
This brings their total holdings to 386,700 Bitcoin.
I mean, wow, that is mind-blowing.
It is. To put that into perspective, that's like, I don't even know, a small country's GDP
Yeah, it's wild.
in Bitcoin.
I know. Their strategy is fascinating. They're not just dabbling in Bitcoin.
Right.
They're adopting what they call a Bitcoin standard,
Okay.
which means they view Bitcoin as the ultimate store of value,
Interesting.
even more so than gold.
Wow.
And they're structuring their treasury accordingly.
Okay, so they're betting big on Bitcoin
They are.
as a hedge against inflation and global uncertainty. But here's what I found interesting.
Yeah.
After the purchase, their stock actually went down
Oh, really?
by 5%, closing at $401.
That seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it?
You would think it would go up.
You would think.
It reveals a lot about how traditional investors are still grappling with cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
It seems that even with a company as established as MicroStrategy making such a bold move, some investors aren't quite convinced yet.
So maybe it's not just about Bitcoin's volatility. Maybe it's also about investor confidence, or a lack thereof, in the companies choosing to go all in on this Bitcoin standard.
Yeah, I think there's definitely more to unpack there.
Yeah, definitely. And while this debate is playing out in the markets, we have some major changes brewing in the regulatory world.
Yeah.
That could impact everything.
Interesting.
We're talking about the upcoming departures of SEC Commissioner Jaime Lizarraga and SEC Chair Gary Gensler in 2025.
Okay.
Yeah, these departures are creating a lot of buzz, and if I understand this correctly, it looks like we're headed for a Republican majority SEC.
Okay, yeah.
Now, what could this mean for the future of crypto?
Well, it's widely believed that a Republican-led SEC will be more receptive to the cryptocurrency industry.
Okay.
So this shift in regulatory power could be a turning point,
Interesting.
potentially paving the way for more crypto-friendly policies and regulations.
Okay. Bruno Caratori, the co-founder and COO of Hashtags, had some interesting thoughts on this.
Yeah,
He emphasized the importance of taking a long-term perspective on cryptocurrency.
I like that.
I liked how he wasn't dismissive of concerns about volatility,
Right. Yeah, Caratori's point is well taken. He's basically reframing how we assess risk in such a new market. Instead of fixating on daily price swings, he encourages investors to zoom out
Okay.
and consider the larger trajectory of the technology and its potential impact on the global financial system.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that we shouldn't get lost in the day-to-day noise and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Right.
Absolutely.
And to understand that bigger picture, we need to consider another factor that often gets overlooked in these discussions, the generational shift
Okay.
in attitudes towards finance and technology.
All right, so here's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
We're not just talking about tech-savvy kids playing with digital coins anymore. This is about a fundamental change
Okay.
in how younger generations, millennials and Gen Z,
Yeah,
view money and value.
I see.
Yeah.
So how are they different?
Well, these generations are digital natives. They've grown up with the internet, smartphones, instant access to information.
Right.
They're inherently more comfortable with digital assets and decentralized systems than, say, baby boomers.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes you wonder if they see traditional financial systems as outdated or even broken.
That's a great point. And this generational shift has huge implications. These younger generations are gaining more political and economic power, and their views on digital assets are going to shape future legislation and regulation.
So the rise of cryptocurrency isn't just a technological phenomenon.
Right.
It's a cultural and societal shift
Yeah.
that's playing out right before our eyes.
It certainly is. And this brings us to another interesting indicator: the continued demand for Bitcoin ETFs.
No.
Despite all the price volatility we've discussed, institutional investors are still eager to get involved.
So even though Bitcoin might seem like a wild ride to some, there's still a lot of interest and belief in its long-term potential.
Precisely. The persistent push for Bitcoin ETFs shows that major players are taking this asset class seriously.
Oh.
They're looking for regulated ways to gain exposure to Bitcoin, which signals a growing acceptance of cryptocurrency in the traditional financial world.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
It is. It's like they're kind of dipping their toes in the water,
Yeah.
without having to like jump all the way in
Yeah, exactly.
and manage like the actual Bitcoin themselves.
Right.
So as these institutions, get more comfortable, we could see even more adoption,
Mm.
more liquidity, and maybe even less volatility down the line. It kind of feels like a domino effect.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. But let's zoom back in on MicroStrategy for a second.
Okay.
We've talked about, the scale of their Bitcoin purchase.
Right.
But I kind of want to unpack their Bitcoin standard strategy a little bit more. It's pretty radical,
It is.
even for a tech company.
Yeah, putting so much faith and capital into a single asset class is definitely a bold move.
For sure.
So what's the logic there?
Well, they believe that Bitcoin's underlying technology, its decentralized nature and limited supply, make it a superior store of value in the long run.
Okay.
They see it as a hedge against inflation and a way to preserve their capital in an increasingly uncertain world.
Okay, so in a way, they're treating Bitcoin like digital gold.
Yeah.
But instead of storing it in a vault, they're holding it on a blockchain.
Exactly. And, they're not alone.
Oh, really?
We're seeing more and more companies, and even some countries, starting to explore the use of Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset.
That's a huge, shift in thinking.
Yeah.
Isn't there a lot of risk involved, though?
Yeah.
What if, the price of Bitcoin crashes?
I mean, there's definitely a risk, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But for MicroStrategy and others who subscribe to the Bitcoin standard, the perceived risk of holding traditional assets, like fiat currencies, outweighs the volatility risk of Bitcoin.
Okay.
So they're essentially betting on a future where Bitcoin becomes a dominant global currency.
That is a bold bet. It almost feels like we're at a crossroads here. One path leads towards a future where Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies become increasingly integrated into our financial systems, and the other path kind of leads us back to the status quo.
Right, and which path we take will depend on a number of factors,
Yeah.
including how regulators approach this emerging space. We talked about the SEC shakeup, but it's important to remember that regulation is a global issue.
It's not just happening in the U.S.
No, not at all. Different countries are taking different approaches, and it can get pretty confusing to keep track of it all.
Yeah, it's like a patchwork quilt of regulation.
Exactly.
And this uncertainty makes it even harder for businesses and investors to operate confidently.
For sure. And this is where individuals like Bruno Caratori play a crucial role.
Okay.
They bridge the gap between the crypto industry and the regulatory world, advocating for clear and sensible policies that protect investors while fostering innovation.
Yeah, he seems optimistic
He does.
that things are moving in the right direction, at least in the U.S.
He is. He believes that with the right regulatory framework in place, the crypto industry can really flourish and reach its full potential.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between protecting consumers and allowing innovation to thrive.
Yeah, striking that balance is key. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about something we touched on earlier. The generational shift
Okay.
towards cryptocurrency. It's more than just an interesting trend. It's a force that's going to have a major impact on the future.
Absolutely. And it's fascinating to see how this is playing out on a global scale. In many developing countries,
Yeah.
young people are turning to cryptocurrency as a way to bypass traditional financial systems that are often inaccessible, unreliable, or even corrupt.
It's like they're building this parallel financial system,
Yeah.
powered by technology, driven by a desire for greater financial freedom and inclusion.
Right.
It's like really empowering.
Exactly. And it's not just about access to basic financial services.
Oh.
Cryptocurrency is also enabling young entrepreneurs and creators to participate in the global economy in ways that were never before possible.
Yeah, I'd love to hear some examples. Like, how are young people using cryptocurrency to create these new opportunities for themselves?
Well, we're seeing artists using NFTs to sell their work directly to collectors without the need for intermediaries.
So they're cutting out the middleman,
Yeah.
connecting directly with their audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And musicians are doing the same thing, using blockchain-based platforms to distribute their music and receive royalties directly without having to rely on traditional record labels.
It's really empowering for artists and creators.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not just limited to the arts.
Okay.
Developers are building decentralized applications, or dApps, that are disrupting all sorts of industries.
Okay.
These dApps are built on blockchain technology, which allows them to operate transparently and securely without the need for centralized control.
It's like the internet is being rebuilt
Yeah,
on a decentralized foundation.
that's a good analogy. And it has the potential to change everything,
Wow.
from how we interact with each other online to how we govern ourselves as a society.
That's a lot to take in.
It is.
Yeah. Their vision is one that embraces transparency, accessibility, and innovation. And it's a vision that's resonating with people all over the world.
It is.
Yeah.
And while this vision is inspiring,
Mm-hmm.
it's important to acknowledge the challenges and risks that come with this new territory.
Yeah, we need to be realistic about the potential downsides.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the concerns that we should be paying attention to as cryptocurrency continues to evolve?
Yeah, that's a really good point, that we've talked about so many potential benefits. But I think it's time to address the elephant in the room, right?
Yeah.
The potential downsides of cryptocurrency.
Okay.
What are some of the challenges and risks that we need to be aware of?
Well, I think one of the most pressing concerns is the environmental impact
Yeah.
of cryptocurrency mining.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that. Specifically, the energy consumption required for proof-of-work cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin.
It does seem kind of counterintuitive to be talking about this futuristic financial system that's potentially harming the planet.
Right, it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah.
The energy-intensive nature of mining raises questions about long-term sustainability.
Right.
But it's not a simple issue.
Okay.
There's a spectrum of approaches to mining, and the industry is actively researching and developing more energy-efficient methods.
So there's a push to make it more eco-friendly.
Exactly.
Okay.
And beyond that, there's a growing movement towards alternative consensus mechanisms,
Okay.
like proof of stake, which are far less energy-intensive.
Okay, so that's good to know. What about the whole issue of cryptocurrency being used for illegal activities?
Right.
That seems to be a big concern for a lot of people.
It's understandable that people are wary.
Yeah.
The pseudonymous nature of cryptocurrency transactions can make it seem like a haven for illicit activities.
Right.
But it's important to keep things in perspective.
Yeah. Okay.
The reality is that the vast majority of criminal activity still involves traditional fiat currency.
So cryptocurrency isn't inherently more prone to criminal activity
No.
than any other form of money.
Precisely. And as the industry matures,
Yeah.
we're seeing more robust Know Your Customer, KYC, and anti-money laundering, AML regulations being implemented by cryptocurrency exchanges and businesses.
So those safeguards are being put in place.
Yes, and they're becoming increasingly sophisticated.
Wow.
It's another example of how this space is constantly evolving and adapting.
It seems like with every challenge, the crypto world just finds new ways to innovate and improve.
It does.
It's definitely a dynamic and ever-changing landscape.
For sure. That's what makes it so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's not a static technology.
Right.
It's constantly evolving, responding to challenges and opportunities.
Speaking of opportunities, I want to circle back to something you said earlier about young people using cryptocurrency to create new possibilities for themselves.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that a bit more?
Absolutely. We're seeing a surge in creative applications of cryptocurrency and blockchain technology.
Okay.
For example, artists are using NFTs to tokenize their work, giving them more control over distribution and revenue.
So they're cutting out the middleman, connecting directly with their audience.
Exactly. And musicians are doing the same thing, using blockchain-based platforms to distribute their music and receive royalties directly
Right.
without having to rely on traditional record labels.
It's really empowering for artists and creators.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's not just limited to the arts. Developers are building decentralized applications, or dApps,
Okay.
that are disrupting all sorts of industries.
Okay.
These dApps are built on blockchain technology, which allows them to operate transparently and securely without the need for centralized control.
It's like the internet is being rebuilt on a decentralized foundation.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And it has the potential to change everything from how we interact with each other online to how we govern ourselves as a society.
Wow. That's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it is.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Bitcoins, like crazy price swings, MicroStrategies, bold bet on the Bitcoin standard, the shifting regulatory landscape, the generational shift towards cryptocurrency, even the potential downsides and risks.
Yeah, it's a complex and multifaceted topic. But hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the forces shaping the future of cryptocurrency.
It definitely has. And I
Yeah.
think the key takeaway here is that this is a technology with immense potential.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still in its early stages of development.
Right.
There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of volatility, and a lot of debate about the best way forward.
That's right. And that's why it's so important to stay informed, to keep learning, and to engage in thoughtful discussions about the implications of this technology.
Well said. So, dear listener, as you continue your own exploration of cryptocurrency, remember to stay curious,
Yes.
ask questions, and don't be afraid to challenge assumptions. The most valuable asset in the world of cryptocurrency is not Bitcoin or any other digital currency. It's your own critical thinking and your willingness to embrace the possibilities of the future.
Beautifully put. It's been fascinating exploring this topic with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
And thank you to all of you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of cryptocurrency.
Absolutely.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.